You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 361, Light of the Jedi, Part 4. And we're a little delayed on this episode by about 3 weeks. We had some natural disasters to contend with, and let's just say I think Jonesy and I are both just happy to be out of the natural disasters and back into the pandemics that we're all experiencing right now. So apologies for this episode coming out a little bit later than we wanted, but thankfully we're back. We're here. We didn't go anywhere. And speaking of not going anywhere, there he is, Mr. Jonesy. Welcome to the show, sir. Thanks for sticking around. Glad your family's safe, and we got through the big Texas turmoil, or Snowvid 21 is, I think, is my favorite term.
Right. It's always the Snowmageddon around here. But I'm glad you thought out. You guys had a pretty rough go of it, but happy everyone's safe. Yeah, state of Texas has had a bit of a rough time. Other parts of the country too, of course. But
yes,
glad that's behind us, and we can, like you said, just get back to the normal pandemic problems.
Oh, I was so excited to come back and do a show.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of weird that that's what we look forward to now, is go back to this other thing, which is horrible.
Right.
But anyway, but nice to be back. Too long. Have to see if we remember how to do this.
Yes, exactly. And just quickly, there are still people that are dealing with problems here and, suffering, and there's a lot of aid going on. So I don't want to dismiss or undermine anything that people are going through. We're thankfully now okay. But again, there are still a lot of people there. And thank you, everybody who reached out to us and just said, hey, how are you guys doing? Checked in on us. That was, top class for you, all of our listeners and supporters. So thank you for that. Okay, well, the other thing too is we've got some news. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Bad Batch announcement May 4th. We'll talk about that more. I'm going to table all that for an episode here in about 2 weeks, just because we've got a lot of content to get through, right? So again, This is part 4 now of Light of the Jedi, and we're going to hit 26 through 35. So those chapters, and there's some chapters in here that are very small, and there's some that are really beefy. They've got some really big components to the overall story arc. So we're going to table all the news till later, but I do want to make just 2 quick announcements before we get started. And the first one is, as you guys, I think we mentioned it on the show. I don't even remember anymore. I think we mentioned on a couple shows ago that we were kicking off in honor of our 10th anniversary of being on the air and doing shows. We were kicking off a new bonus show called From a Certain Point of View. Trying to think of the name. A Certain Point of View. And we were fortunate to bring JW on. We recorded that one. We released it. Was it this week or was that last week now?
Last Tuesday came out.
Last Tuesday. Awesome. Okay. So if you hadn't had a chance, go listen to it. They're going to be smaller shows. I think that one came in right around 40 minutes or so. So almost like a sweet spot in terms of, listening time for your drive in or, whatever it is you're doing. But that one went really well. We're so excited. We've got so many other great listeners, supporters, friends of the show that we're talking to right now to bring on. So just keep watching the feed. You'll see more of those coming up. And again, those are all topics that they're coming to us with, things that they want to get off their chests, things they want to talk about. And that's the most exciting part, because we just get to kind of help fill in the blanks and, steer them wherever they want to go with that conversation. So it's a really good format, and I really enjoyed it.
Jeff was kind enough to do video with us as well. So if you want to go check out the YouTube channel, you can see the video of the whole ordeal. But yeah, great conversation. Glad we're doing this. It's a lot of fun.
And speaking of our 10th anniversary, I have, for those of you listening to the podcast, you don't see this obviously, but we're making a special announcement, a special reveal of our 10th anniversary logo. So it is the normal Cantina Cast circular logo is supposed to be the 0. I've thrown a 1 right in front of that, and it's, it says 2011 to 2021, and it says years underneath. So 10 years. I think officially it's May 13th is, I think, the date, if I'm not mistaken. Mike knows the date. He's always tossing it around. But yeah, so May 13th. But we're going to be doing some other things, some other activities, some other promotions, and all kinds of other great stuff as we get closer to May. But the logo's done, thankfully. It's been in the back of my head for about 1.5 years now, and finally it's out. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoy it. You can see this. We'll put it on shirts and stickers and I don't know, whatever else we can get it on there for anybody that's interested, including ourselves.
That's right. My mugs need more stickers, as always.
Yep. So yeah, happy anniversary, happy birthday to the Cantina Cast this year. Crazy, 10 years.
That is crazy.
Show has changed a lot.
Who thought it would survive this long?
Not Mike. Not Mike at all. Okay.
More than once.
More than once, yeah. I think he was ready to, I think he thought his thing was done. And he was like, not so fast. Here we are. Ta-da.
I don't think so. All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's get into this. All right, we're going to start with chapter 26. And boy, I got to try to remember what was going on here. So chapter 26, this opens up on the chapter 26 Salvation Class Republic Medical Frigate. Is it Panacea? Panacea? Let's go with that. That sounds better. Panasonic, Panacea. And really, we've got a few people here. And this is when we were talking about when we went and did the High Republic kind of overview show. We mentioned that Boryaga was a character that really didn't like to socialize. And there's a lot of reasons why. And this is where a lot of that is exposed. We get to find out his inner workings in terms of how he feels socially, being in a lot of circumstances the only person that can speak, Wookiee, Chirrwug, and there's very few people that can respond, and naturally, this is exactly what's going on. They're meeting with some of the survivors from the Legacy Run, and they're going to go out there and commingle and say hello, and these people are survivors. They're looking up to the Jedi. They want to say thank you, and it's kind of like a police officers reuniting or firemen reuniting with people they've saved in disasters like that. This is very common. And so the same thing here. What's really cool is he's wearing this tabard, which I really, really enjoy. And I like the fact that they didn't put him in. I mean, he does have his ceremonial garbs, right? But you can imagine how hot a Wookiee must be in in full garbs with all the hair and everything else. It makes sense that he would have something with a little more ventilation, like a tabard only. And we should also mention this ship is one of Soule's works as well, like this medical frigate. And I was thinking about this. It reminds me of when we had the pandemic last year, and they were was it Mercy? I think is the name of the big carrier or whatever they sent out to New York,
right?
To kind of help take the load off some of the hospitals. This is a very similar situation here, right? They've got this huge medical frigate that Soule wanted to build, and it just really kind of traverses around the galaxy and provides need for whoever needs it, right? Whenever they needed to call upon it. And so this is where they've all kind of gathered here. In the one thing that, and I guess we see this with Boryaga, we saw it once earlier when he detected, no one else could detect that the people were on that one little ship container, right? Earlier on, that's how they saved him. And here, he's really connected with all of these people emotionally, and he feels very vested in all of this because he was here at the very beginning. So that's really kind of compelling him to be here, even though he doesn't really want to be here. And that's got to be a really uncomfortable situation for him.
Yeah, the whole situation's a little bit weird because and they say that it feels like a party, but it's not a party because it's a tragic set of events. But like you said, it's an opportunity for when they said, well, why are we doing this? It's to help give these people hope. The Jedi represent hope. And so it's just something to lift their spirits that they can recover from this. There is a future, and the Jedi are going to try to figure out what is going on, because there's a lot of survivors type of guilt going on with these folks too. And but I really like Boryaga's character in this because it's one of these things that he has his lightsaber on his hilt, right, and he's going up and he's talking to these people, and he's being summoned over by his master, and you could just almost sense the trepidation about it. He doesn't want to do this. He understands why you do it, but it's just not his forte. He's happy to go stand over at the cocktail table and eat the
non-meat.
Eating the hors d'oeuvres and whatever. Eat the not meat. Yeah. But it's interesting they specified his lightsaber and how snug it was against him. And it's like one of those things of certain coping mechanisms, like you have a coin in your pocket or something in your pocket that you can reach in and you can touch just to help ground yourself. And it reminded me very much of that. And I like that we have that kind of correlation with this character, and that he has just some way of just connecting to, like you said, he wants to connect. He's connected to it. So he wants to go through and see this thing to the very end, but that he has a special connection to these folks already, but he still doesn't want to be around them. But I think the one thing I did like, though, is that you still get this sense of the revere of the Jedi, but also that they don't want the spotlight. And even though they have the spotlight, they're still very resistant to, embellish about it or to brag about it or have any kind of hubris. And I think that's still really important for us to continue driving home throughout these early days of the High Republic.
Yeah, and very different than like Pika and Arden, or Pika and Josh, who are kind of like
they're having a good old time.
I mean, they're getting drunk, mingling. This is like just another cocktail party for them. So yeah, quite a contrast there. There's a couple other things that we learned about Boryaga here. He's 100 years old, so he's very young, right? Relatively speaking to most Wookiees that we know.
Yeah, light colored fur.
Yeah, and I guess they were implying, and I guess this makes sense. I think we've seen it before, but implying that as they get older, the fur starts to darken, and then it turns kind of grayish, and it gets a little bit longer, so maybe thicker. So he's a very lean, light-looking kind of character right now, and I think a total of about 30 people had survived, and he's feeling all these emotions, right, from people around him, regret, shame. They talk about like survivor's guilt. I think you mentioned that as well. That's all kind of coming through him, but he spots this one little red-haired boy who's kind of out there talking to a robot, or maybe the droid's talking to him, and he's not really reciprocating because he's just kind of in a daze. And he approaches him, and there's this really great moment there where he's just hugs him, and this boy kind of just finally releases, right, all this emotion that he's been building up and haven't spoken to anybody about, really. You could tell he's been just containing it and bottling it up, and he kind of lets it all go in Boryaga's arms, and Boryaga does use the Force, right, to kind of calm him down a little bit. I mean, he didn't like invade him in any way, right, but he definitely did something, at least just to kind of put him at ease, that kind of let his guard down so that he could release all of that, the emotion. And that's where he finds out that this boy was actually the one that we mentioned from what was it, back in, was it the very first episode?
First chapter.
Yeah, first chapter of Surge. And so Surge was the one. He feels guilty. He feels like this was his fault. He was trying to slice into the hollow terminals or whatever, and right before everything happened, he actually got to witness what happened, or like what was in the middle of the hyperspace lane. And so on the screen right now, I've got this picture up of the ship that was there, and again, we blew this up, and I blew it up for the sake of this discussion as well, but this is what he saw. And I think the way it later on is visually explained, when they're kind of going, after they've gotten the flight recorder, spoiler alert, they're looking at this ship, and it's actually kind of crossing. It's almost intersecting like at a 90-degree angle. But they actually see this particular ship crossing over, and it does look like it's definitely a ship from the Nile. And we were talking about this too, Jonesy. We were talking about the ships having 3 bolts of lightning. I guess I can make out the 3 bolts of lightning on here. Do you see that in there? It's kind of worked into the design, or maybe I'm willing it to exist.
I think so. I think some of it's also the scale of what we're looking at, and just being able to draw it. But they've got enough detail in there. I don't really see it in that though. But
all right. You leave me alone. Yeah. So Surge is, he's crying, and again, he was privy to what had happened. And we also learned that his parents were in a different chamber, so he's been separated from his parents. They've not found his parents just yet, so he's kind of just been alone with really no one to talk to. And so it's at that point he takes him over to Nib, his master, and the boy tells everybody exactly what happened. And when they asked what he saw, he said he saw lightning. He saw 3 strikes of lightning. And so this was the first clue. This is the big clue, I guess, that really kicks us off into the Jedi and the Republic starting to put the pieces together, right? Drawing all the connections back to the Nile.
Right. So there was a comment to touch on Boryega just for maybe one last moment here.
Yeah.
I really liked how he was able to communicate with Surge, and just being able to physically interacting with someone, even though you can't understand, but finding a way to connect with them, even a touch through the Force, is just such a really cool interaction of being able to empathize and feel that, and give him that comfort so that he's able to open up later on. I think it was really interesting. I really enjoyed reading that part of it. Yeah. There was another comment though that it was kind of a throwaway comment, but this thing keeps coming up, and there was a comment that said Master Chris and her partner Elzar Man. Right. I mean, these two are always together. They're inseparable. And it was just a really curious comment, the use of the word partner. And it's going to come up again here later, and I'll point it out then too, but it keeps coming up. And so they're dropping all these obvious hints, I guess. So,
oh yeah. The sexual tension is like thick.
Right. Yeah. We've already we already came across it once, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were they on Naboo or something, which I don't know, everybody gets a little lightheaded about. Yeah. But anyway, it just keeps coming up, and we'll keep talking about it as this thing evolves here.
Yeah, every time one of these moments comes up, I get the Love Boat theme playing in the back of my mind. So that's kind of where I'm at with all of this. But yeah, no, it's there are plenty more moments here that happen between those two, and it is an interesting use of partner. I think they even talk about it. Like someone, it's Tiami makes a comment about having a relationship with Mikkel a little bit later, but. They flirt around with this topic a lot more than you would think they would, right? Especially if you come in from the mentality of the Phantom Menace, and for so long, we always felt like, okay, prior to the Phantom Menace, that they couldn't have lovers, right? And it's a little bit more refined than that. It's attachments, right? So there's kind of some wiggle room in all of that. But coming from that, even from that perspective, the way they're just kind of very nonchalantly, casually talking about it and joking about it, no big deal. And maybe we'll see some of that manifest here later. Maybe it's that which kind of brings the whole empire down, right? Or brings the whole republic down. Love. Wouldn't that be interesting? Ooh, I like that. All right.
Always make it a mess.
Yeah. Let's get into chapter 27. And so we're back on the planet of Elfrona. And this is where we had the Blythe family has been recently kidnapped. Porter Ingle's down there. We've got Belle, we've got Logan and Dira. So they're all kind of chasing in pursuit. And it starts off with Erica, which is the mom, B, which is the daughter, Ron, who's the older son, the teenage son, and then Otto, who's unconscious, and he's in the back of this cart. So they're being taken by these Nihil. The Nihil are trying to take them out to their escape ships so they can get off planet. And the reason why, just to recap, the reason why their ships are so far away is there's a lot of magnetic activity going on in this area, and so they couldn't land here safely. So they had to traverse by land speeder, which didn't make it, in order to capture the Blythe family. So,
right, and the Blythe family are a rich Alderaanian family that decided to get away and rough it, and so that's why they're an attractive family. Yeah, worth a lot of money. And it's Ron who notices that far off into the distance behind them, he's starting to see these little sparks of light, and realizes that somebody's in pursuit of them. And as they get a little bit closer, they get closer and closer. You realize that there definitely are people chasing. There are definitely four figures coming in on Steelies, and they're being. Here's the cart. I assumed it was a repulsor lift cart. I don't know. Maybe I made that up. It may not be. I don't think it ever said. Maybe it did. Maybe it did. But I found this one. I was like, this looks great though.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I drew this in about. No, I'm kidding. I didn't draw this. I literally did a Google search for it. But I would imagine it's a repulsor cart. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a primitive cart. Who knows? But the cool thing is, Otto finally comes to. I guess he was kind of playing possum, really, and he makes a little sound that causes all of the Steelies that the Nihil are riding to suddenly come to an abrupt stop. And this, sends a number of them flying off their Steelies, and the cart, the one that was in the car, I think was a Trandoshan, was in there. It's basically a delay tactic, right? Once he realizes these people are behind them and chasing them and trying to catch up with them and maybe potentially rescue them, he does something to kind of give them a little bit more time. He then takes a butt to the face, a rifle butt to the face. He's knocked out. And then Mom takes one as well. But this is they try to escape the cart at that point, right? And I guess that's when all that happened, when they got the rifle butt to the face and that sort of thing. We learned the names of two of the Nihil here. Dent, I think, is one. So there's a cloud named Dent, and then there's Ega and Rel, which are I guess they would be strikes if my math is right,
right. Yeah, clouds are level above the strikes.
Yep. And then there's another one named Mac and Buggo a little bit later. So these names all become important. I guess they're not technically that important, but because everything that's about to happen, they drop the names, and you got to kind of follow exactly what's going on. And this chapter is really quick. I mean, and I'll let you speak to anything I missed, but it really just kind of ends with the mom noticing that those sparks are getting light or brighter, and they're starting to kind of kick up, right? And they realize, okay, these are definitely Steelies, but then she also sees three lines of light: one gold, one blue, and one green, which are the lightsabers of Ingle, Porter, Loden, and Belle, because Adira's already kind of flying off in her vector there. So, but yeah, and then she realizes, okay, these are Jedi. Wow. And you think about Jedi and just the prospect of hope that people have with Jedi around here, you got to feel like they're feeling pretty good. So, and I'll explain the little GIF here, but what are your thoughts here on this chapter?
We also start to see some of the tension between the clouds and the strikes and just the group in general, and how they are starting to disagree about what to do as they try to get away. And we're going to see a little bit more of that descent here when they learn what's really chasing them. But yeah, I know you're super excited to talk about this, so I'll let you just make sure you describe this for our audio-only listeners.
Yeah, so I've got these little GIFs up of these horses that are running with fire underneath their hooves. And as I was reading this novel, the very first time I was reading it, and they mentioned that the sparks, right? So these Steelies are kind of made for like these metallic horses. And in the area that they're in, the terrain is such that as the Steelies run, sparks fly, right? And so the faster you go, more sparks kind of looks like fire. And it was a really cool visual. And I was thinking, that really reminded me of the movie Krull. In movie Krull, there's a scene in there where they get on these horses, and these horses are a little bit different. I mean, they were basically just Clydesdales that they used, but as they ran, they'd leave a trail of fire, and if you got them up, past 80 miles an hour, you could go back in time, or you could fly up into the air with these horses. They would fly, and they'd leave this whole trail of fire behind them. But that was kind of like the visual that I got of it. And I have to believe that this is what Kevin Scott, or not Kevin Scott. Charles Soule, sorry, not Kevin Scott. Charles Soule was going for, just because the way he writes it, it's almost painted perfectly, right out of Krull. So, anyways, but that was the only thing there, and I had to include it in there. So,
well, when I saw your animation, all I had come to my head is Path of Illidan from World of Warcraft, as a little bonus on the collectible card.
Yeah, that's a good one too. There's actually, no, we'll save that for another time.
Yeah,
because we could spend a lot of time talking about Okay, let's move into chapter 28, and we're in hyperspace back on the new Elite. So this is Kazov. Yeah, this is Kazov's ship. What a hot mess. And it starts off with these guys, and
this was really weird, by the way.
Was it? Was it just the drugs, the usage, and the rock and roll, and
it was just so outlandish. I mean, it was when we've had drug use before, it was never really. I mean, this wasn't really articulated, but it wasn't articulated really in any kind of way before, using death sticks or whatever, or spice, but they just say they're doing it. But this one, I mean, they've got smash and rounders and all these things. They got wreck punk going on in the background. I mean, it's just an all out, oh man, it's like a rave.
It was.
And they're going to go do stuff with it. They've got some stones.
Yeah. I mean, so this is how they get all hyped up. They get super high. And then they take these things called rounders, which kind of, I guess I'm going to say, take the edge off. I don't even know what that means because I don't do drugs. But the way I got it was, it still left you on this super high, right? But at the same time, you were more coherent, and you weren't just I don't know, sluggish or whatever. You were still your senses were still heightened from the drug. So. And that's important. It plays into what happens here in just a little bit here. The rounders do. I can't believe we're getting into the Star Wars drug dissection episode. Well, that's coming up here sometime in 2021. And we also learned that Kazov, right? He's like always wanted to take out Ro, but he's never done it because, one, he had respect for his father. I think all of them did, right? The Tempest did, but at the same time, he knows that Ro is very well protected by the droids that are there. He's got some Sentinel droids that kind of protect him, and taking him out, it would really kind of cripple the whole structure of it all, right? Because now he's got to contest with Lorna D and Pan as well, and that's just, none of them really want to get in that situation because it would just become complete chaos and they'd be trying to kill each other, right? So there's almost kind of really would like to kill him, but there's really not it'd have to be like the perfect opportunity, and there'd have to be a lot of pieces put in place before someone could follow through with that. I think Lorna D would probably be the only other one that I would think would want to, though. Pan doesn't really come off as somebody who's out to get Ro. But what were you going to say there?
The way the systems that they've constructed here, and we've talked about it before, is the eye gets a vote. So there's really 4 votes, and the eye is the tiebreaker anytime you have it. And Kazov really explains why this is so important, and why the eye, while he can't take the eye out because it's beneficial for them, because he feels like he would be outnumbered most of the time on these votes. And so it's beneficial for having, and then also the Ro family is the only ones who know the secrets behind the paths, and they will take that to the grave. And so really the only 2 reasons why this all this stuff with the Nile works at all. And as long as that construct is in place, then there's dissension in the ranks, but at the same time, they all are willing to push this thing forward. But they don't really respect, I didn't really get an idea that he respects Ro all that much for the position. And it's just more of an inherited type of job or inherited position. And I don't know if it was revere for his father, but it was definitely a little more respectful of how he ran things, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like he's respectful of the legacy that was left behind, right? More than the figure that's currently in power. 100% picked up on that. Right. We also learned, there's interesting too, like we learned some more about his the way Kazev has got his team set up. He's almost got his own like rule of three, right? He's got his character named Gravin, Delix, and then Wetbub, who I think was probably the most important one, the most interesting one. And
Wait, hold on. I got to ask you. I'm sorry.
All right, yeah.
When you saw the name Wetbub, what was the first thing that came into your head? Did you go Gungan, or did you?
No, no, not at all. Like Wetbub, I to be honest, it was such a weird name. I mean, with context, it makes sense now because it's a Gungan. But then, really, you find out that the wet part is actually not even water. It's like something a little bit more sadistic, you know. Right. Yeah, and I'll get to that here in just a second. But if you look on the right hand side, that's the concept art that was drawn up. It is definitely a Gungan with a mask, a Nihil Gungan, and he talks like a Gungan, just like you would, which I thought was great. That the fact that we've got an evil Gungan is just really cool. But in the background there, on the left hand side picture, that is the one that was released when they were talking about the Nihil on the YouTube series that to kind of focus or highlight, spotlight some of the characters in the High Republic. And I think that's pretty much, I believe that is him. It looks like a kind of a Gungan with the ears kind of flapping there in the wind. But nonetheless, his name, Wetbub, right? The origin is really because when he killed his victims, he liked to bathe himself in the blood, like the wet blood of them. And I'm like, wow, that's like crazy sadistic and like mental, right? I mean, it's just nuts that we've got a character like that. And I'm wondering if are they going to get into like, are we going to see something like that with this character? And we don't in this novel, spoiler alert there, but kind of a crazy character concept. I like it though. It's very different, very, very different. I mean, complete contrast to what we got with the Gungans and all the silliness and everything else, right?
Well, and with Kazev, he's like, okay, well, to each their own. He's not going to get into their business. That's the whole benefit of the Nile. Everybody kind of does what they want. As long as they get the job done, that's all that matters. The rest is his business, no matter how crazy or sadistic or whatever you want to call it is.
Yeah.
So it just gives you, again, just this dynamic of within each of the Tempests as well, much less the Nile altogether.
Yeah, and we should mention Wetbub is a slicer. That becomes, again, important here in just a bit. We get a little bit of the more of the hierarchy of how things are going. It almost feels like a pyramid scheme, right? like they're selling, I don't know, Scentsy candles or something. They go out and they find people and they recruit them in and they kind of get them going, and then their job is to go eventually build up in the ranks and then have their own crew, and then all this money kind of funnels up through that eventually gets into Roe and the three Tempests that they split up. So it's very much like a pyramid scheme if you think about it. But the other part is, they pride themselves on having the freedom to do whatever they want, right? This complete kind of anarchy, but it's really not the case, right? They still have, borders, and they've still got things they have to fall in line with. Prime example being, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, right, they all have to report up to either Kazev or ultimately they report up to Roe, and we've already seen what happens there when he calls a judgment on everybody. So they really don't have. I mean, it is kind of a false sense of freedom that they have, and it's that sales pitch of ride the storm, baby, ride the storm. Right? I mean, that he even says that's kind of what they're going out and telling people to do, and how they recruit their folks. But yeah, it's a little jaded. They really aren't truly free by any means. Right. So they are headed to the Iridu system, and this is we'd mentioned in the last episode that because they were able to determine where the other emergencies would go or come or show up at, they would be able to kind of extort people. So if they knew one was heading to a planet, they could get there ahead of time and say, "Hey, we're here to stop it if you pay us a lump sum of money." And that's exactly what happens. They're heading out there to Iridu to kind of to do this extortion, I guess, for lack of a better term, right?
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and so they show up at what was the name of the system that they were at? I don't think I got that down. Oh, well, not the system, but it was the governor. So Muriel Veen, right? She's the planetary governor of the Iridu system, and they tell her, "Look, there's 3 emergencies that are going to happen here very soon, and here's one, and boom, it shows up. Right? Here's a second one, and that one shows up." And if you don't give us 50 million credits right now, we're not going to stop the third one. We know where it's at. And she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't give in until I think that second one takes out. What was it? It
was a medical frigate, I think.
Yeah, like a medical frigate or something. Yeah. So she lost a lot. She lost some lives there. But he tells her you're going to lose billions if this third one hits. And so you really need to make a decision. You've got like 30 seconds to make the decision because that's about to come out of hyperspace. And the minute it does, when she realizes that, she kind of gives in. But two important things happen here. One, while all of this is going on, she's pretty smart, right? She runs the plates, right? She runs the
Right.
plates on the ship and determines that, who he is, cause of, they know his ship. They know that he's associated with the Nihiler at this point, which is kind of that was a miss on their part, right? This is really kind of the dominoes start to fall for the Nihil. That kind of puts Ro in a really tough position here a little bit later.
Right.
But and I forget, was it someone didn't, oh no, okay. Yeah. So that was the first thing that was going on. And the second thing was there was one of the guys, I think it was Delix.
Delix, yeah.
Yeah. So Delix got super high on drugs. He didn't take his rounder, right? So when the 50 million credits is transferred over to them, they're like, okay, let's go in there, swoop in and shoot this thing down before it hits the planet or the moon. And, he's high as a kite. He's like Snoop Dogg high. And he tries to shoot this thing and he misses, like he doesn't hit it. And so
they overshoot. Yeah. They overshoot the jump. So when they fire all the missiles and everything, it just goes into empty space. Yeah. They completely blew by it.
Yep. So yeah, this guy again, so he screws up and this thing ends up hitting the moon anyways. So it ended up hitting the moon, and I've got a little visual here that I found, but it hits the moon, kills, billions of people. And, Muriel Veen is like ticked off. Like she's really upset because, she gave in, did what she needed to do. She's 50 million credits down, but more importantly, sadly, she's now lost 8 million people or however many people that were, I think it was 1.2 billion. Sorry, just for perspective, 1.2 billion people died as a result of Delix, not taking his meds, I guess. So
right. Well, and the other thing is that this is where we learn what kind of people they are. The Iridu are. Yeah. Where she starts threatening him immediately. You don't realize that we're hunters, and you are now the prey. And she's going to guarantee one thing, and that's going to be vengeance. And she sounds like she means business. She is pissed. She's just off the rails mad. And every right to be, of course. But and of course, he's like, well, it happens. It's business. And then he hightails it out of there because what else are they going to do? He kind of shuts her off.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. But he knows. but we also get this sense this is the first time we've seen Kaza really kind of cower back a little bit in front of his own people, because now he knows he is a marked man and he needs the safety of the Nile in numbers. Otherwise, he and his crew are going to be in a ton, or his Tempest in general, are going to be in a ton of trouble because they're going to have these people after him. They're going to have the Republic after him, and they might even have the Jedi after him. And he knows he really screwed up, but he has no choice but to turn around, because I think he was about to jump ship and bail on the whole operation, right? Yeah. Once they collected this, he was thinking about just boosting it and going, and just take their chances elsewhere.
Yeah, and so just a correction, there was 4 ships that were destroyed in the second emergence, and it was they were carrying lomite, which is that's right. It was like a new material that was used for transparent steel or something like that. I think it's the stuff they make for like windows, right? The windows on ships that are like steel, but made,
that's right,
translucent, whatever. So anyway, so that was it. But yeah, and so yeah, they hightail it back, and he's got a lot to think about on the way home, especially with how he's going to approach Ro and them, and kind of explain just what the heck just happened.
Right.
All right, so let's get into this chapter 29, and this one's a little bit beefy. There's quite a bit that happens, even though it really doesn't take place anywhere else.
Yeah, really not a whole lot happens, but it's kind of an exciting chapter, I think, overall.
Yeah, it's significant. There's some pretty significant things that occur here. Right. And it starts with this, so we're on the Hetzel system, the Rooted Moon, and there's a total of 57,870 droids that have kind of been stitched together by Kevin Tarr, and to form this computation array, right? He's put all these droids together, and there's like 12 nabulators, which I thought was really cool that they mentioned those. Those are the Lobot characters. There was 12 of those guys, and that they came from the Santekas. So there's some relationship that exists with the Santeka clan and the Lobots of the Star Wars world, and likely because they were pioneering, hyperspace. There's obviously mathematical computations that need to take place. What better, people to recruit to be on your team than these, nabulators? That's what they do. But when this was going on, when I was reading this, and initially too, do you remember like in the early 2000s, the Seti program? Were you ever part of that? So the SETI, and I'll make this quick, I promise, because we have a lot to talk about, but I have to get this one out. There was a SETI program. It may still be around, I don't know, but there was a program that you could download and you could install on your computer, and you can install as many computers as you want. And what it was doing was taking these mathematical computations from the SETI program itself, right? Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And it was basically distributing a lot of the computation work that needed to take place, the data that they were collecting, out to your own personal computers. So,
you know what? I think one of my best friends, Brian, used to do this because he always had this stuff running in the background.
Yeah, it was like a cult phenomenon. Yeah. Look, there's SPs in here, man. He knows all about this. Trust me. But so you could. He says, "I love the SETI." But yeah, you could do this. You could go and install this application, and so you felt like you were contributing to the search for extraterrestrial life. And it's kind of like what's happening here, right? He's distributing the load amongst a lot of these. He needs a lot of droids, and you know he has 57,000 that he's trying to do this, and we probably should give you the context here. They're trying to go back and do three things. Number one, they're trying to create a computer simulation of the original disaster, right, based on what they have, the facts and the data points that they have right now. The second thing is they want to do a model so they can determine where all of the other emergencies are going to or have been so far. And then the more important one is to kind of calculate where are the rest of them going to show up, right? If they can find out, they can do calculations based on that, they can project where they'll show up and proactively stop these from destroying more planets or ships or whatever else. Right. And so he's kind of, again, he stitched all these droids. He's got 57,000. I think he said he wanted at least double that, right? So 120, just call it that. And later on, he's like, he realizes that the minimum number is actually 75. Like, even though he had 57,000, he still needed 75 just for this, even to have a sense of confidence that this thing was going to work. But I thought it was a really cool concept that this was happening. And I guess, and we've talked about this enough, let's just bring it up again. It does feel like this is kind of a Pathfinder way towards what we would know to be astromech droids, because those little guys do all of this on their own, right? I mean, it takes a little bit of time. And Navicomputers are another, right, built-in kind of astromech droid. But it seems like this is the infancy of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, even we already know that Chancellor Soule also wants to do things like the HoloNet. So how do you bridge that? How do you weigh all sorts of devices and all sorts of, basically networking all these things together in order to make it all, something more powerful and kind of like what you were saying, just, but yeah, all these things make they all kind of lead this path. And I'm still with you. I think Kevin Tarr is going to invent something of an astromech droid.
Yeah. Well, we learn a little bit about his background too, that he's grown up in the Hetzel system, kind of a farmer life, if you will, at least around agriculture. And, earlier on, he considers himself a slicer, right? He says he sliced, he sliced agriculture, and he kind of sees this as slicing hyperspace, really is what he's doing. He's trying to figure out how to break the code of what hyperspace is and all of that. Very smart guy. And we also learned that there are a number of people here that are in attendance, a lot of really important people here watching the firing up of all of these droids. You've got Senator Noor and her aide. I think it's a female, Jenny Wataru.
Yeah, Wataru, yeah.
She's there as well. Secretary Laura Leah. I think we've seen her before. Mm-hmm. Minister Eka, Avar Chris, Elzar Mann are both there. Marlo and Velas Santekas, so the Santekas have showed up. And Talon Card, that's not his name. Wow, that's the wrong book. Kevin Tarr. It's funny how that stuff sits in your memory, right? Like,
I know, right?
No, sorry, not Talon Card. Kevin Tarr mentions that he wants to work with the Santekas after this, and I don't know if they're kind of foreshadowing something there. I think they may be doing that. Maybe that's another missing component from him building out Navidroids or Navicomputers and astromechs. And then there's also Chief Inman and Lieutenant Peoples, which is interesting because those are the two characters way back in, I don't remember what chapter it was, but when Captain Bright. Yeah. When they went in to go rescue those people and Bright ended up sacrificing himself so they could escape, they were actually both one rank lower. But as a result of that rescue mission that they did earlier on, they've now been promoted. So you see those kind of things and you think, okay, these are going to become more staple characters, right? It wouldn't surprise me if we see one of these guys continue to rise in the rank and become, a more prominent character in the novels or in separate storylines, which is really cool. I love the fact that, again, this is all world building stuff that's happening, which is really great. Okay, and so while these droids are about to fire up, he's worried because he knows he's going to lose droids. So the margin of error, I guess the margin of the percentage that the likelihood that some of these are going to just bow out is pretty high because he doesn't have 57,000 right off the assembly line, highest CPU type droids. He's got a potpourri bag of whatever was on hand and whatever's been sitting in storage or, was slated to be retired, but then brought out. And so he doesn't even really have like the best of the best here in terms of droids. So he's pretty sure that these guys are going to start buckling down here. And it's funny. He says prayer, which I thought was really neat. To the Divine Matron, the Satron Saint of Hetzel Prime, which I guess is what all of these people pray to for agricultural stuff. So,
right, yeah, he has to work. Yeah, he had to work really closely with Santekis just to make it all work. And as they start to fire it up, I mean, he knows something's going to go wrong because they're just not built for this. And then he expects them to start crapping out pretty much almost immediately. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they fire it up and things are starting to work, and he gets a little bit of confidence. Then he starts to see what the one thing that maybe he didn't think as much of, and that was heat.
Yes.
And all this heat, and these things start going out in waves.
Yeah. I think the first, one of the nodes, like node 5, starts to overheat. And so, right. And the way this, if you think about it conceptually, right, if one node, if you've got a farm of droids that suddenly all go down because they've overheated, the burden of computation now falls on everyone else, right? And so this is a compounding problem. The more droids you lose, the harder it becomes on everybody else to kind of pick up the load and carry the load. And so this is where he said, okay, maybe I did need 75,000 just to compensate for the loss of computation that would take place. Right. This is the most nerdy episode I think we've done.
That's saying something.
It is saying something. They're right up there with the basement. But yeah, so yeah, he's got these pill droids, right, that are also there, and they're kind of going around. They start trying to put out they've got like extinguishers or whatever.
Suppressors or whatnot.
Yeah, so they're trying to keep the temperature down. But he's got a really serious problem with the heat, and everybody's starting around. Everybody that's watching this, and all eyes are on him. He's like completely freaked out, right? Because he's the task. Even though he willingly took this upon himself, he knows how important it is, and there's a lot of room for error here, and there's a lot of room to be labeled as a failure, and this could impact his career. Right? He's got all these things he's worried about. Which are very natural, but yeah. So he's already lost about 10% of the droids. Mm-hmm. By the time he starts, before the Jedi come up and talk to him, he's already lost about 10% of them, and they're dropping fast. They're getting data, but it's just not happening fast enough. Right. And that's when, thankfully, Avar Kriss comes over, and again, her presence is just very calming. But she does use the Force here, much like we saw with Buryaga a couple chapters ago. She comes up, uses the Force just to kind of calm him down. Hey, tell me what's going on. She senses guilt, shame, frustration, all these emotions that he's kind of toying with right now, and knowing that this thing isn't working the way he wanted to. Now, while this is going on, we should mention it is doing the computation. Like they've already gotten, so they've gotten past the model, right? So they can kind of see what had happened, and they were kind of moving into like phase 2 at this point. But things were starting to really kind of deteriorate. And he tells her that, hey, I've got a heat problem here, and the more these things heat up, the worse it's going to get. So she then in turn reaches out to Elzar Mann and says that tells him, he's like, hey, I got a great idea. I don't think this is going to work, but how about we try it? And sure, like in the Force, he tells her this, and the response he gets back from Avar Kriss is, that's impossible. Like there's not going to work, dude. And he just simply responds back, help me, right? I thought it was a really cool little exchange that they had mentally through the Force. Right.
And again, this is Elzar Mann. This is the value. We talked about this a few weeks ago. This is the value that he brings. It's out of the box thinking. He comes up with an idea that no one else would have thought of, and using the Force in a very unique way that these folks probably never even considered doing. I mean, I don't know if you'd have an application for it. I guess you probably would. But he's actually going to he's going to make the heat rise and make it rain, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. To be able to do all of that and actually make them all, make everything form up and actually drop precipitation on it.
Right.
And so it's a very interesting idea, and it worked. I mean, it's just another testament to Elzar Mann of being able to come up with something, and him and Evar Chris being able to kind of do anything together.
Yep.
We get another thing here of Kevin Tarr saying, there was Evar Chris, and of course, a few steps behind her was the other one, Elzar Mann. They always seem to be together. So again, attached at the hip. But yeah, I mean, Elzar Mann's really cool. I can't wait till we actually get more about him.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it as well. To be honest, there's and I've got pictures of them here. Forgot to throw it, and that's the Kevin Tarr that I came up with. I don't know if that's really him or not, but yeah. So they take a knee, they do the meditation, they lift the heat up. The Soule gets into like some of the science behind it and what happens and how they're able to turn this heat into precipitation. But it just starts to rain, and like Jonesy said, it cools everything down, and it ends with them being able to see the 34th emergence. And so this is the one that's yet to come, which is good. So they've gotten that far. And at this point, it's just about keeping this thing running and keeping the heat down until this thing plays out and they can account for all of the missing pieces of the legacy run. So good stuff there.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into chapter 30. We're doing pretty good on time. I was worried this was going to be like a 4-hour show.
Well, there's still time.
We can still screw this up, Jonesy.
Right.
So this opens up with Porter Engle doing what he does best, which is just be like a badass character. I mean, he's sitting there talking to the horse, cheering it on, right, pumping it up, telling him how wonderful that horse is, and he was called to do this. I mean, he's just like getting in the mind of this horse and really wanting him to help him out as much as he can.
Well, it was really great, some of the things he said, though. And there is no pain. There is no fatigue. There is no fear. You're a luminous creature. It was just interesting the way that he spoke to it. It was, I don't know, it was very inspiring.
It was inspiring, yeah.
I was going to go out there and start riding a horse, being a horse.
Feel free to jump on my back, Porter Engle. I got you for this. Right. I'll do it for you, buddy. And so he's riding along there, and he broke off. I don't know if we mentioned that, right? I think he broke off to kind of deal once there's these shots that come in and they take out his horse. And it fires him off his horse. Loden and Logan, sorry, and is it Loden?
Loden, yeah.
Loden and Bell keep on going, but he sticks around to deal with these snipers that are kind of up in the hills, if you will. And his poor horse is like, I think it's dead from what I remember.
Yep.
But yeah, and then at that point, he knows they're up there hiding. He's just kind of standing there all alone. Suddenly he jumps and blocks a bolt in midair when he's thrown from the horse, which was kind of cool. And then at that point, he realizes that there's two people that are around him, and he starts yelling at them. I think he's trying to talk to them, trying to coerce them to kind of come out, show themselves. And it's at that point that there's 3 bolts that fire at him. He deflects the first 2. He blocks the first 2, and then I think he returns the third one in the direction in which it came.
Yeah,
and that's when he realizes,
swats at it, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's a little bit later. I think that's when he stops it with his hand.
Oh, okay.
I think that's later. But the
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, because he's still got his lightsaber. That's when he doesn't have, and that we'll get to that because that's like, I'm all over this, right? That's Vader and Satele Shan right there. Right. But so he knows that the general area of where this one sniper was, so he jumps like straight up into the air, and he's got to be able to jump at an incredible height because he's able to actually see, from high above where this guy's at.
Right.
And that's when he pulls a Vader and like whips out his lightsaber, like throws his lightsaber in that direction. And this guy is hiding behind a rock thinking that's going to protect him. Well, that lightsaber goes right through the rock and then goes right into the Nile and kills him. And in true like Jedi fashion, the first thing that goes through his mind is like, I'm so sorry that you put me in that position and that, there's a loss of life here. I mean, he's going through all these emotions, or not, I would say emotions, but he's going through all of that as he just killed the guy that was trying to kill him, but yet he still has a remorse and still values the life that was lost, even if it was somebody like a Nihil. So it speaks to Porter Engle, and it speaks to the Jedi at this time.
Exactly. And I think also, so when he was figuring out, when he was still on the Steely, he was still figuring out what he was going to do with these characters, or what they were going to, how this was going to end. He didn't want it to end in bloodshed, but he knew he was kind of resolving something that was. But when they killed the animal, he basically snapped right to it, and they had a really great line in here. He was not angry. He was certain. Mm-hmm. So like you said, these guys all signed their own death warrant by going this route and by shooting him in the back, or trying to shoot him in the back, and the things that they were doing. And it was all, sometimes justice takes on this type of form. And he's unfortunately got to be the one to administer that justice. And this is what it's going to cost. It's going to cost every one of them their lives, and they just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to get that inner thought, the inner monologue of how that works and how they approach all of this. And do they even think about it? And Porter Engel, man, this guy's deep. He's got all sorts of stuff. And I really like it when, well, we'll talk about it here in a minute. But
yeah,
there was another moment I just laughed so hard.
So if that wasn't enough badassery, right? He's in midair. He's just thrown his lightsaber. As he's coming down, the other sniper takes a shot at him. And that's where he's got no weapon. And in his mind, like in a split second, he goes through all these things about, okay, I don't have a weapon. They talk about how the Jedi at this time have been trained to do things when they don't have a weapon. And so what he does is he actually just uses his palm and like he uses his palm to deflect the blaster bolt right back at him. And it doesn't hit him, but it hits in that general direction and it makes him scatter. But the cool thing was he had a couple of different options that went through his mind, right? He could have, he said, done two other things. He could have deflected with the Force, made it go around him or go by him, right? Make it go past him. That was one option. The second option was the Kylo Ren option. So we know that the Jedi at this time could do what Kylo Ren did, which was freeze blaster bolts. But he didn't choose to do either one of those, even though, again, he could. He chose to deflect it back towards him because, one, maybe there's a chance that it would hit that person, but he was going more for the intimidation factor, right? Which is what he really wanted and what paid off for him, because this is where that Nihil decides to take off and run off. And so he ends up kind of running over the hill where he was. And I'm trying to get caught up on. I got all caught up in the excitement of what Porter Engel was doing that I lost my place in the notes here. But yeah, so he jumps on a Steely, and he blasts a bolt. Sorry, go ahead, take it.
Yeah, he starts he starts cheering up the horse again, and the Nihil shoots at him again, and he deflects it right back one more time and hits him square in the face,
the helmet,
or in the head. So so he's knocked over dead, or at least presumably so. And so now they're back into let's catch up and start doing some good. But he didn't know that he wasn't dead.
Right. Yeah. And so he's right. He's about to take off, and he realizes he has this flash of all of the memories right before he dies. He's about to die because he doesn't realize there's someone, that one that he just shot. He thought he took him out. Turns out it hit him in the helmet, knocked him down, but it didn't kill him. And this Nihil was able to get a shot off on him. And his brain was in a different area of his body, is how they explained it. Yes, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, good point. So even though it was a headshot, the brain wasn't impacted. There, and the one thing that goes through his mind, and I think maybe this is the part you said that you were laughing about, but the one thing that the last regretful moment he has of his life is the fact that he never got to try a particular recipe.
Right. He was going to refine his pie recipe, and he wasn't going to get to share it with anybody. And I stopped. I cracked up and started laughing because it was so perfect for Porter Engel. And I can hear Jeff probably just did the same thing and started cheering in the air. If you need more Porter Engel to be any more amazing and awesome than he is, he's upset that he's not going to get to try a pie before he has basically resolved himself that he's dead.
Yeah. And so the other thing about this too is right before he dies, before we get into how he doesn't die, right before he dies, he says he's about to prepare himself to enter the Force. And I don't know if it's still hard for me. We don't have a good sense yet about, okay, where do Force ghosts fit in right during this era? Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? Was he preparing himself just to enter into the living Force or cosmic Force, whatever, one or the other? And I don't know. I mean, I don't.
There's a difference, Howard.
Well, I know there's a difference. I know. I said that. And I'm like, someone's going to give me grief. Go back. We already did 2 episodes on this, so don't give me any grief. We've talked about it.
That was almost 3 years ago, man.
Yeah, it was 3 years ago. But yeah, he does prepare himself to join the Force. Now, what that means, I don't know yet. But right. I'd love to know more about what the Jedi do at this time when they do die. But okay, so he doesn't die, thankfully. And I've got a picture of Ember jumps in. So this is was it the Firehound? Is that the name? The Firehound comes in and just lays this guy to waste, just blasts his fire all over this Nihil and just keeps on going until this thing's just burnt to a crisp. So he's saved by the dog, if you will. And it's at that point he decides that he lives another day and takes off along with Ember at that point.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of the first part of this. And did I get I did. Okay. So then we transfer back over to Loden and Bell, who are still in pursuit of the other Nile and the family members that are there. And up ahead, they can kind of see that there's two starships. They can now see them in the distance here. And so they realize, okay, we're not going to probably be able to get there. And it's at that time that Loden pulls out that long piece of metal that he took with him, right? It's a very, very small piece that's kind of mentioned in one of the chapters right before they left. He went and dug into the is it the Vanguard ship?
V-Wheel or something like that.
V-Wheel? I thought it was a Vanguard, maybe not.
It was a Vanguard, yeah.
But it was whatever the Jedi used for like all-terrain vehicles. He pulls out that piece. Well, it turns out that was actually a cannon that's powered by the lightsaber. So he took that one component out, puts his lightsaber in there, throws it over his shoulder, a la Arnold Schwarzenegger, and fires this thing and takes out, like it splits one of the ships right down the middle, right? So it's like
it almost arc of blue lightning, I think is how they described it, right?
Yeah, because it was the same blue light that was generated from his lightsaber.
Such a unique weapon. I mean, it was like it's like one of those pulse rifles or something you see like in Halo.
Exactly. And the way they describe that weapon, though, that seems like really overpowered. Like it's basically a big lightsaber coming down and slicing something in half, right?
Yeah.
Just magnified. And you got to think, like, where is this at? Like, why are they not using this weapon a lot more? Maybe they are, and this is just the first time that we're being exposed to it. But
and we do get a sense of how powerful the weapon is. He couldn't, a little later on, he wouldn't be able to fire it a second time. It probably would have exploded in his arms.
Yeah,
I'm sure the ship had some, better way of protecting the housing and all of that. But it's clearly a pretty extreme weapon when you need an extreme weapon.
Right. There's and at that point, it's when the Nihil realize what just happened. They kind of strategically position themselves in front of the other ship. So they can't use that weapon again, even if they wanted to, because they would run the risk of hurting the family, and so he kind of just chucks that to the side. And it's at that point that the Nihil throw Erica, the mom, they throw her out of the back of the cart, which,
they shoot her first. Yeah.
Yeah. And right. They shot her, throw her from the cart. Loden and Bell have to stop, which is going to, slow them down. They use the Force to kind of heal her a little bit, and the Nihil make it over to the ship. They start up the ship. They're getting ready to take off, and they lift off and start coming directly for them. And this is the part that they didn't really get into a lot of detail here. I mean, I kind of drew my own conclusions as to what exactly happened, but it's like, again, another display of power from the Jedi that I don't think outside of Luke Skywalker later on, I can't think of any other Jedi at least from canon that have been able to do this. But, he stands in front of Bell, who Bell then stands in front of Erica to kind of protect. And he essentially just, I'm assuming, again, based on the way I read this, and tell me if you got a different interpretation, he used the Force to either deflect or absorb the blaster bolt from the ship in some way, because he took pain. He got hurt from it.
I think he was using his lightsaber to actually deflect it, because there was another point when he they said he had to move. Bell had never seen him move so fast, and he was literally getting pushed back further from each shot, and so he survives the volley, but he kind of falls to a knee, and they described the lightsaber as like flickering in and out. That's why I assumed that he was probably taking ship laser blast to the lightsaber itself. I don't know how I'd feel about a Jedi being able to deflect a laser bolt from a ship. I
didn't say deflect. I would say block is, I think, the word I meant to use.
Or redirect. I mean, we've seen this redirection type of thing and pulling and pushing things already, right? No, I took it from the lightsaber. Each impact would just drive him back further into the dirt, and they talk about how he's digging in. But nothing got through. But it took a lot out of him. His lightsaber seems like it's maybe needing to recover. Yeah. And he tells Bell, you've got to stand up here, because I can't do that again.
Right. And so he does. And of course, he's like freaking out because he just saw his great master do this and took a lot out of him. And of course, we know what he thinks about himself, that he's not ready and he's got a lot to learn. And he's only 18 years old, and he goes ahead
he'll do what he has to do, though, right?
Right. Exactly. He does step up to the plate, if you will. And right before it's about to happen, Indira comes in. So she's the one that broke off earlier on. And she ends up taking a shot at the ship, which leaves it incapacitated a little bit. It's sputtering now. And so the ship breaks off and tries to head out and get away. And then she drops in. next to them. Bell is going to decide that he's going to stay behind and take Erica back to the outpost. And then Porter shows up, and Porter is like, nope, I got this. I'm the best medic. Don't worry about it. You guys just go take care of that ship. Stop it from getting out of here. And so Porter, Loden and Bell jump into one of the ships, and then Indira has hers. So Indira was flying 2 ships at once, right? Again, so another display of Jedi power here, being able to, mentally navigate a ship while while piloting her own ship using the Force. She brought in a second one as well, so that was kind of neat.
It is pretty neat. I mean, they've talked about this ability a couple of different times throughout the book, but it's interesting to see them actually in combat and be able to do it. Now, granted, she's not getting fired back on, but to see it in action, and then they jump in there and they're going to try to go off after the kids.
Yep. So you got 2 vectors going after them at this point. So that was that was a good one. There was a lot of good exciting stuff that happened in display of Force powers.
Yeah, and we had the Nile. I mean, throughout all of this, we were talking a little bit about it earlier. The Nile are debating about. I mean, these people are valuable. So each one that they throw out or they kill or whatever it is another 25% off the cut, right? And so they've been bickering back and forth at times about what do they do with them, because they want to just chuck one out and, like you said, slow them down or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, they're like, okay, no, shoot her and shove her out. Anything to get away. Anything is better than nothing at this point. And they're getting very close to just straight up survival mode. But so that's kind of why we keep seeing these people falling out of the ship or getting tossed out of the ships.
Yep. Yeah, they're bleeding money every time they have to do it, which they don't really want to, but it's more about survival at this point. I think they've broken even. I think they said, or they're like there's no profit gain at this point now that they've ditched 2 people anymore, and it's a loss.
Right.
Okay, so let's get into chapter 31. So we're Deep Space Republic Longbeam Aurora 3, and this is so we've got Pika and Josh Arden, the couple, along with 4 Longbeams and Tayami and Mikkel. So these are the all the characters that were part of rescuing that little what was it, the cargo hold that had the kids in there, right?
Yep.
And they're ahead of they know where the 39th emergence is going to show up. They suspect this is most likely going to be the flight recorder, which they really need to kind of put the whole picture together. And so they're kind of just sitting there idle, waiting patiently. What they don't know is that also waiting there idle and patiently is Lorna D. And we get some background, more probably than anything in this chapter here, with her ship and how it operates and that sort of thing. And we get the sense, I got like a Bird of Prey from Star Trek kind of vibe, right? That it's got some firepower, but it's really not a warship, which maybe that's not the best example, but she's able to kind of hang out and not be detected and not be seen with her ship. But at the same time, for all of the stealthiness that it provides her, it's really not a true warship, right? She can't really get into a one-on-one fisticuffs with another ship because she just doesn't have the shields or the firepower for it. But that's part of her style. She's more of kind of a hit and run tactical kind of a attacker.
Exactly.
And she's there honestly and she sees the ship there. She sees all these long beams. She sees the 2 Jedi ships, and she's like chomping at the bit to blow one of these guys up, blow all of them up, because they don't know that she's there. But she doesn't, because she's for 2 reasons. Number one, she doesn't want her ship to be identified like it happened with Kazav, right? And doesn't want that to get out, because now there's another fingerprint that leads to the Nile. And then, excuse me, too, Marchion Ro had given her strict orders that her mission in all of this was to get the flight recorder. It wasn't to start a fight. First and foremost, it was get the flight recorder before they did, the Republic did, and then get out of there.
Right.
So it's why she's just kind of sitting there idle and fuming about the fact that she cannot attack them, even though they're just sitting there, literally sitting ducks at this point. Right. Excuse me. And so we also learned that Kazav had come back, and with his tail between his legs after what had happened. And it's funny, he offered $30 million, which he said was 30 million credits, which is what he said he got as part of that last excursion, which we know is not the truth. He got 50 million, but he lied to them and said it was only 30, so he's pocketed the other 20 million as a way to make up for what had happened.
Even though they were broadcasting it all the way across the Republic.
Right. Yeah, and this is the part that was really interesting. Like, one of her own tells her that the flight recorder, once it comes out, right? So the flight recorder, the emergence happens, and one of Lorna D's own people says, nope, that's not it. It's let's move on. And so they're about to like just get out of there and take off, which is not what happens. And on the other side, the Republic determined that it is the flight recorder. And so you've got Mikkel and Tiami, and they start the maneuver to go retrieve it. Excuse me. And it's we get a little bit of exchange here. This is that what I mentioned earlier about like there's like a there. I don't know if Mikkel was coming on to her or not.
He wanted to work with her.
Well, yeah, but
Wink, wink, nudge.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt
he
like
was
it was
awfully persistent, though, man.
Yeah,
and she was giving that vibe back.
I mean, it's a Duros and a Thorian. Like, what is that? Like, what is that?
Love knows no race and
color. I don't know.
Whatever.
Like his mouth is over by the back of his head, or
it's Star Wars. They can get creative.
They can. All right. Well, enough of that. But yeah, so I think he's got the hots for her. He did, which is unfortunate because she doesn't make it out of this chapter.
Yeah. I think one other thing before we get too far.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's clear that Marchion Ro, he starts saying that his contact and he just knows too much, and so it's clear that there's a mole in the
Republic.
He doesn't. Charles Soule doesn't really hide it all that well. Like, I'm pretty sure we know who the mole is. Like, really quickly as we go through the rest of the book, it's pretty clear it's one of two people probably. But it's clear that there's a mole because he's getting information that's otherwise he has no idea, because he knows the Republic has found a way to model the emergences. And so he's already calculating and strategizing what the next plan is going to be of what he needs to do, and whether it's the whole lay low thing or whatever it is. But Lorna D needs to get this, because otherwise they'll be able to see that it was the Nihil who were in the path, and that they're going to have a mark on them.
Yeah. So, all right. So love interest aside, they're about to go make the maneuver to retrieve the flight recorder when they notice suddenly all these missiles are shot out of somewhere, right? And we know this is Lorna D. And the missiles are fired. One of the long beams is taken out immediately. It tries to it says they try to get in these defensive maneuvers. So they were, there's two things going on here. They're trying to shoot down and take down the missiles if they can, but at the same time, they're trying to maneuver their own ships and almost as a blockade, almost as a meat shield to ensure that the flight recorder doesn't get destroyed. And unfortunately, one of the long beams does a really good job of that, because the missile hits the long beam and it explodes and destroys it.
Right.
And then just for the sake of expedience here, they go through this whole process of taking out, like some of the long beams take one out. The Ardens get a chance to take one out. Mikkel blows one up. We whittle down until there's only one missile left, and Tiami she's on course to intercept it and take it out. And right when she's about to do that, there's another missile that's fired that no one saw, and they know it's coming from the area. And I think that when the second missile is fired at Tiami, this lone missile, they do get a sense of where this ship was, so they know the approximate area that it's in at this point. But unfortunately, she's about to take out the missile. She's successful in it. She takes it out before it hits the flight recorder, but it's almost at that exact moment that her ship is blown up and she's killed from Lorna D. So we lose Tiami in this one, which I was not expecting, honestly, because I wouldn't say she's a real prominent character, but she's not any less prominent than many of the other characters that we've had in the novel. So
right, and she's in Into Dark as well. So there was a lot of setup for that character only to lose her. And it sounded to me like she used the Force to blow it up, the one behind her, and she just got engulfed in it or something to that effect.
Maybe.
Is that what you took from that as well?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it wasn't exactly clear. I mean, there was moments where she could, like she said that she could feel it, like she was going to detonate it in some way using the Force. Yeah,
Mikko it's kind of give us the commentary of all of this, right?
Yeah, he could sense all of that. But yeah, I don't know that it was explicit. In any case, yeah, she didn't make it out of that, and so unfortunately, she died. And so this causes the Ardens and Mikkel to turn around and head into the direction of where Lorna D's ship. And of course, like we said earlier, her ship really wasn't made to take on all these other ships, and so she decides
she fired her whole salvo at this already, so she knows that she doesn't have much left to fight them off anyway.
Yeah. And so she ends up, leaving, running away to fight for another day, kind of thing. So yeah, rest in peace there, Miss Little Tiami.
Pour one out.
Pour one out for the homies. All right, chapter 32. This is a really quick chapter. And it's focusing on Dent and Buggo. So these are the two Nihil that finally got away. That are still in the ship that's kind of limping along. It's got smoke coming out the back of it. They're trying to get to a safe distance so they can jump into hyperspace and get out of here. And it's a side story. They were actually family. Like, it says that they were like, I think Buggo was her second cousin's husband or something like that. I don't know why that was important, and I don't know why I put it in the notes, but it was just like, okay, maybe there's a lot of nepotism that happens in Nihils. Maybe, I don't know, who knows, but but Dent tries to call in for a new path, right? He calls in like, hey, we need paths. We got to get out of here. We've been hit. And he's told that that it's not been approved.
He's got to run it up the chain. Yeah, something isn't right. Yeah.
And of course, that's like bureaucracy at its finest, right? It's going to take forever before they get these coordinates, and they don't have that much time. They're trying to get out of here as quickly as possible. So then she orders the other Nihil. She's like, "Well, forget it. We can't wait on this." So,
and the boss, when they come back with that, they're like, "Well, either you'll hear from us or you won't." That's it.
Yep.
Good luck.
Good luck. We're all counting on you. I mean, it's just like feeling so stranded and alone and like without any hope or help. That's kind of what they were feeling. And not that you sympathize with them by any means. Right. It's probably more comical than anything because it's like it's not a well-oiled machine, and they really don't. They're not caring for each other, right? They're not selfless in that way.
You get that there's something wrong though. Why aren't they helping these folks?
Yes, and it's all by design, right? I mean, this is all Marcion Rowe's plan, which we find out later. So she kind of pulls an audible here and decides to go to throwing out B, so the little girl. They're like, just pitch her out, and that's why I've got the what are the imposter? Yeah, the imposter being Among Us going on there. So yeah, they jettison poor little B out there. Now she's not in space; they're kind of still in the local atmosphere of Elfrona, but they throw her out the window. And that's it. Again, it was like literally like 3 pages long or something like that for that chapter. Okay, 33. How are we doing on time? Oh, yeah, we're good. All right, so we're in the Outer Rim again. This is the third horizon. And Avar Kriss, Chancellor Soule, and others are now watching the flight recorder. It's been retrieved. And they're kind of watching to see how it happened. And they see the ship with the 3 lightning bolts. They notice that it moves, again, not parallel, but perpendicular to the hyperspace lane that they're in. And this is, the Santekis, they look out, everybody looks to them like, is this, like, what's going on here, right? Like, this shouldn't even be possible. This is defying the laws of physics as we know it, at least currently. And the Santekis say it should be impossible. They don't say it is impossible. So they're kind of playing word games there. And I think Kriss picks up on this. Like, she picks up that there's a little bit more they know that they're probably not being as forthcoming as they probably should be. And she regretted
not letting Elzar Mann push them a little bit harder. If you remember, he was wanting to use the Jedi mind trick, or whatever they call it, mind influence. Or
he called it a mind trick, I think.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, but I forgot what other people called it. But yeah, he wanted to push them harder to try to get more information because he knew they were hiding something. And now she's like, yeah, that makes sense. But they have been super helpful, and they were. Mm-hmm. She was getting this sense of kind of a bit of a perplexed, emanating from them, that they weren't really sure what was going on either.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't get the sense that it's anything nefarious, right? I mean, it's more like I think there's the fact that what's her name now, their sister or whatever, the family member that's sitting with on a Marcion Rowe's ship. I think it's partly that, right? You've got this person that's out there. Maybe they had something to do with that they regret, or the fact that they could be traced back to the Santekas. Probably not a proud moment in their lives in terms of what happened with her. We don't know what the story is just yet there. But at the same time, there's probably some, self-preservation with regards to, company secrets and trade secrets, right? All that stuff. I think they don't really want to kind of give all that information out. So they're saying, yeah, it could be possible. They probably know how to do it, but we're not going to exactly tell you all the tricks of the trade. We'll see how this plays out. I think it's a very interesting perspective from them in the fact that they are kind of hiding it a little bit. But
if we recall, the way that they described hyperspace was more of this, like a different plane of existence almost. So that you're kind of coming in and out of whatever this portal is. And so it's very peculiar that there's any object in it sitting there that you would come across.
Yeah. And so they identify the Nile because of the 3 lightning bolts, and I think it was the Santecas that said, "Oh yeah, they're around, but they're kind of small fries, right? They're not a big
problem."
Yeah, it's a regional problem. These guys, we've heard of them. They're like guerrilla tactics, hitting little onesie twosie things here and there, which is all part of Marcy and Rowe's plan and his father's plan, right? They never really wanted to be a bigger threat. They wanted to stay low, ease back when they needed to, attack when it made sense, and just kind of be out there and make their way, because they were living the life, man. They had these paths that they could do whatever they wanted to freely without any kind of worry that they would run into or be, followed or tracked in any way. So they had a pretty good thing going on here. Excuse me. So asked for the Santecas' opinion, and they said that that they believe this was truly just an accident, right? That this was nothing intentional that the Nihil were doing, that they just happened to be in hyperspace at that time, but they wanted to look into it a little bit further. And then orders that all the lanes remain closed. And so this really pushes Senator Noor. So there's some politics that's going on here, right? Senator Noor is more concerned about, look, it's very like parallel to what's going on right now, right? We've got the economy in the U.S. locked down. There's restrictions because of the pandemic. It's kind of the exact thing that's going on here. They've shut down these hyperspace lanes because they don't want these things they don't want more accidents to happen. They want to save lives, but at the same time, it's starting to hurt the economy. And there's other planets out here that rely on these hyperspace lanes being open just to get like daily medical supplies or food supplies. And with the lanes being closed, right, the longer they do that, the harder it gets for everybody. And so Senator Noor is actually on the other side of this. He's trying to push for, hey, let's open this all back up. We've already gotten the flight recorder. We've done a lot of great data mining here. We've got some great projections in terms of where this is all going. Why do we still have all these lanes closed? And it drives him nuts that So is saying, nope, I'm keeping them closed a little bit longer because there's still some unknown factors here. Right. Now, this plays a little bit later.
Yeah, as said, well, hyperspace is okay. We don't seem like the good news is we don't think there's anything wrong. But the other thing that Senator Noor is sensitive to is that there's beginning to be civil unrest. And so people are getting desperate, right? Their lack of supplies. People don't sit idly just because they can't get things. No, they start getting desperate, and you will have chaos if you don't take care of that quickly. Yep. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a great point. This all plays a little bit later, and I don't remember if it was this part or a little bit, if it was in the next chapter. I'm going to just mention it because I don't think we have, and it does play in a little bit. But we learn there's some foreshadowing that happens here. His aide mentions that, hey, you really should, run for chancellor. And he says, maybe I will, kind of thing, right? I think that's foreshadowing. And I think So, maybe not now, but very soon, is going to get challenged when her position comes up. Maybe we go through the whole no vote of confidence thing all over again that we saw in episode 1. But it feels like when So's, and I'm making a lot of assumptions here, and this is just purely conjecture on my part, but if this plays out the way I think it is, you've got I think So is actually critical for the success of all of this. And, we're waiting for all these dominoes to fall, or waiting for these little pieces to come off that really kind of start to bring the infrastructure down, or at least allow the High Republic to fall from the high and go into what we know now, going into episode 1, or the emergence of the dark side. And it feels like with So in power, it's really, it feels like that's, I don't think it can happen yet. But if we get into a situation where someone, usurps her or takes over, and they don't have the same drive, they don't have the same political views or the same goals in mind, maybe that's where someone gets exploited. And we don't even know a whole lot about Noor either, in terms of is he able to be manipulated, right? We know he's vying for power, and he's at least considering it, but I think this is really going to play out a little bit later. I think So is going to get challenged, and my gut tells me now she is going to fall probably to him, and we'll have to see what that looks like later down the road.
It's so incredible that that's even possible, given everything that she's done.
Exactly.
What she wants to do for the galaxy. It just seems so
far-fetched.
She's got all this political capital as well. So, I mean, we won't dissect it right now, but it just seems unfathomable that she would even be in that position to where this would actually be a real thing. And I don't think he quite gives it enough serious thought, but it is now in the back of his mind. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Right. And so at this point is like furious as well, because she's now like, she wants blood, right? She wants these Nihil have become a really bad problem for her. Even if they are small fries, the fact that they've been able to do as much as they've done, as they've been able to cripple the galaxy as much as they have, being as small as they are, is too much. And so she basically tells everybody, look, go bring the Nile to justice. We've got to kind of put an end to this. And that's kind of where this one,
well,
one ends.
Keep showing up. So, I mean, clearly there's something with it, right? They keep having these run-ins with them. And when they put it all together, I mean, it just makes sense. Something is up. You got to go figure it out.
Yep. Okay. And so there's the visual for that. So back to chapter 34. So we're back in No Space, the Great Hall of Nile, which is on the ship. And this is like one of my favorite chapters because this is the transitional chapter for the first transitional piece for Marchion Ro here. But you've got Marchion Ro, you've got Kazav. Let me see. I've got the picture up here. Kazav, you got Pan and Lorna D. They're all kind of having a meeting, and Ro gives them an update that the Republic is aware of who they are now. And based on the flight recorded data, they also know that it was one of Pan Etta's clouds that was coming back from a mission. So it does seem like it was an accident, maybe. But Pan Etta is kind of responsible for it. So all three of these guys, if you think about it, they all have blame here, right? You've got Pan Etta, who kind of was the first piece of all of this that what kind of led to all that. He started the domino effect. And then you've got Lorna D and Kazav, who both took shots and did things they weren't supposed to do that really were kind of risky and allowed the Republic and the Jedi, more importantly, the Jedi, I think is where he really fears more than the Republic, because he's, they're kind of mystical to him, and he's not really sure what they're capable of, but he knows that he doesn't ever want to get to that point where he has to contend with them. But yeah, he's not feeling very good about this. He's not feeling very good about where their position is at this point. So this is where he mentions also that he's got a spy in the senator's office. So this is where he's getting a lot of his intel from. This plays out a little bit later. They also realize that, like I said, the Jedi are going to be hunting them down at this point. Like, they are wanted, and there's way too much exposure here for them. Like, they were never supposed to be in this position of notoriety that they're in, and yet, here they are. And this is where, like, Marchion Ro starts to lose it. Like, he punches Kazav, like, in the face.
Yeah, let's back up just a touch.
No, sure, I'm jumping into the good stuff here. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah. So Kazav wants to close up shop and appear and basically turn tail and run, right? And this is where Ro, I don't know if it's as much losing his mind over or snapping. I think because we said, what was it in the book? It's like, this is the time or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So clearly, go ahead.
Oh, there's a line that he says, change can be staggering, my friends. Like, he thinks that in his head. I think he says that to himself, if that's what you were going
for. And so I think he finally realizes that he has had a plan for a while. It sounds like is the kind of the impression we start to give. And this is that moment where he can exert that power because he is seeing the cowardice of Kazav, and he knows he has all of them. He's got this control over all three of them. And this is that moment. This is that fulcrum moment, that pinnacle where you're like, okay, this is the time we make this change now and exert his strength and his power. And we will go down my path now. And they have no choice but to accept it because they are a marked team now. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the galaxy knows who they are, and they know they're going to be quick. Now they've still got a couple of things in their favor that we're going to find out about, but it was just really telling though that it was clear that Ro finally met that breaking point, but also just saw the opportunity finally show up, and then clocks Kazav right in the face. And I guess he's got some sort of power
gloves
or something like that, so he can knock a hole through a wall or something.
Yeah, I mean, he punches him in the face, knocks him back, and it stuns Pan Etta and Lorna D. His dad never did this,
right?
And Ro, up until this point, has never displayed this kind of power. I mean, aggression. Yeah, I mean, in fact, earlier on, he made they do a good point. They do a good job of pointing out that is not the role of the Nile, right? Of the Eye. They're really just kind of they provide the paths, and it's these guys are the ones that are the warmongers. They're the ones that are going out there and waging war and starting fights and all that. So yeah, this is very different. I mean, and it's unsettling for Lorna D, especially. Like, I think it throws her off, like, seeing this. And just one quick mention, or I guess one other highlight here. It seems too coincidental, and I can't honestly. And you keep me honest here. I don't remember them getting into this so much. Like, we know a lot of the stuff that's happening with the Nile is all by design. It's almost like a Emperor Palpatine kind of thing, where he's been planning a lot of these things, putting pieces in place for these things to happen. But you think about it, like, it just feels like there's too much that's perfectly aligned here, that all three of them have, own some level of responsibility for getting them to this point. And it almost justifies, like, it almost feels like he did these things intentionally so that he could justify the overtaking of the power as the eye. But I don't know. I feel like maybe that's giving him a little bit too much credit. The only reason it really got reinforced lately was because they released that little video of like, again, the highlight YouTube video, the showcase one that they made on Marchion Ro, and they do mention that he is a strategist, and all of his stuff, like his greatest power is his ability to strategize and manipulate people. So you think it's kind of like a Palpatine thing. So I don't know, maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but could he have done that? Could he have put all three of these people, or all three of these groups and the people that follow them, in positions to weaken them so that he could make an easier transition of power here? Or is that too far-fetched?
I don't think it's that far-fetched. I think he put general things in place that were happening. But I think he never really quite knew or understood what that time was going to be. Mm-hmm. But he had to be ready when that moment did come and present itself, that he needed to jump on it and move that forward. So I think he did cut a couple of things in place, but then he just let that evolve and let that move around. And as soon as the opportunity was there, you spring. So I don't think you're that far off at all. I think it was very much it may have been more of a broad stroke, but that was definitely the plan all along, is that he needs to hit them when they're at their weakest, especially when there's a weak link in the chain. And clearly it's Kazev at this point.
Yep.
Because this guy's just, I mean, we've known this about him the whole book, where he's kind of the loose cannon of the group.
Yeah.
But what's interesting though, is that all of a sudden now even Panetta is like, what do you want, boss? Basically type
exactly.
of thing. I mean, Lorna is stoic as usual, because she's observing. She plays the longer game a bit, but even Panetta starts to back down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit of there, because we do have kind of a cool moment here with Kazev. And
so Kazev, after taking that punch, he decides to pull out his blaster and take a shot at Ro, and Ro then whips out a Vibro Star, which I'm guessing is like a Chinese throwing star, a ninja star that just...
Oh, I visualized it.
The Vibro, which is cool. Like why wouldn't they create that?
They were like up his sleeve or
yeah,
or something like that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, he goes all ninja-like and throws it at him, and literally like slices half of his hand off in the process. And I think the gun that was holding the trigger too. So, and that's again pretty violent, brutal. These catches these guys completely off guard that he does it. But I guess and then at that point, Kazev gets up. He tries to punch Ro. Ro grabs it. He catches the punch, then throws him to the ground, then puts his foot right on his chest and pins him down. And I'm going to just quickly read this piece because it was really like powerful, I thought. But once he puts his foot on his chest, he says, "I am the eye of the Nile, as was my father before me." And then immediately you get shades of Return of the Jedi right there, which I'm pretty sure that's what he was going for. But he says, "We made this organization what it is, and I will not watch you destroy it with your selfishness, fear, and weakness. You made a mistake, Iridu Kazov, and at Iridu Kazov, and it showed us your belly. You need to remember how this works, Chief. The Nihil need to stay strong. And one way that happens is by cutting out the weak." And so this is a callback to, cutting out the weak when they jettisoned that one poor character that had screwed up earlier on in the novel. But I mean, this is a bold statement by him, and the fact that and this is where, like you said earlier, now this is a big shift of power here, because Pan, as big as he is, it's like you said, he's like, "Dude, tell me, what do we need to do?" And that's exactly what happens, because Marchion Ro then proposes, "Okay, here's how we're going to fix everything. Here's exactly what I've thought through. And everybody's got a part here, right? We've got to retrieve the flight recorder. We've got to lay low, and then he wants to reorganize and use the paths to kind of just stay on the run for now." And the flight recorder was so damaged, so they don't have an exact way to find the Nihil. So they're not in fear of like being tracked down at any moment. But he orders Kazev to go and intercept a ship that's carrying it and destroy it. Which, again, this is all part of his plan. We'll see how that goes here a little bit later. Then he orders Lorna D to head back to Afrona to help her crew finish with the kidnapping that was going on, right? Again, setting these two up for failure. And then the last thing is he tells Panetta, "Yeah, you're good. Just hang back. You got nothing. I don't have anything for you to just, chill out. Don't worry about it." And it's Ro, he's doing these things, which again is very unorthodox for the Eye, things that the Eye normally didn't do. They don't give orders, right? All they did is provide paths. These guys would do the orders, and if there was a vote, then again he had the tiebreaker. But this is very different, completely different in terms of how they were going.
Yeah, he's clearly the leader now, and everyone will fall into step, or you'll be put out the pasture.
Yep. And that chapter ends with him telling Kaziv to, before he leaves, don't forget to pick up his hand that he had left on the floor, which I thought, again, kind of sadistic and brutal, very violent.
There's a few of those moments in this book where they just make you chuckle and shake your head. You're like, that's great.
Yeah. All right, last chapter before we go here. Chapter 35, this is a pretty quick one. This is, we've had this moment. We've been, they've teased it a number of times, and it's been leading up to this. But Belle and Loden see Bee thrown out of the ship. So she's kind of in a free fall right now. And Loden tells Belle, he says, Padawan, you will save the child. I will continue on and save the others. Do not fear. I am so proud to have been your teacher. Like, he's talking in the past tense too. Like, and I don't know if he was like, okay, I'm just prepping myself or whatever, or, hey, you may not make this fall. I don't know, but I was proud to be your father. I couldn't tell exactly what context that was coming in, but nonetheless, I mean, having your master tell you that, and then this is what Belle's been struggling with, right? We know he's had problems being able to do a jump from high heights and land softly, safely, and here he is 3 kilometers above the ground. Like, my guess is he's never had to do anything at this level. Like, this seems like even severe or extreme for the best of the best, or the masters of the Jedi. But yeah, I was not prepared for this moment, honestly, because it was all very, when that whole test happened and he pushed him out and all that stuff, and he was saved at one point. I think it was by Indira, but I guess I was not ready for this moment. I was kind of on the edge of my seat, wondering how's he going to do this. It didn't seem like it would be in him.
Right. But it was such a fantastic moment for Belle, though, when he catches Bee, he finally gets it. It's not about saving yourself. That's not what it means to be a Jedi. That's not what you inspire. It's about saving others and giving yourself, for others. And his moment in time was to make sure that Bee was safe, and to make sure that she felt that comfort and she had that hope, even though he was in total doubt of himself. But he finally had this moment of clarity, though. And it's where he was able to, get her to say, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And over and over, and to the point where it's almost like a chant, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a really great moment. We talked about a transformative moment for Marchion Ro. I looked at this as more of that transformative moment for Belle. I mean, clearly he's, going to be applying what he's been learning, but it was just this moment where you just finally get this, you finally make sense of everything that you've been taught. And you can, you just kind of start putting it together, and you start to feel like you've made a leap. You've made a significant step forward that he was unable to make under normal circumstances.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he successfully, safely is able to land at such a great height, which I was just talking.
This next chapter.
What's that?
Chapters away. Because at the end, he's telling B it's going to be all right, but he doesn't really believe himself either.
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but yeah.
He does.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he's completely he doesn't think it's going to happen. But there's just a lot of doubt here. But nonetheless, the point I was going to make is, and I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. It's really neat that we are seeing so many different kinds of power, at least in canon, right? We're seeing things that Jedi could do that we've never seen before, and I'm starting to call these like the lost arts, or the lost abilities, or the lost skills, because you would think there have been plenty of moments in canon storylines, whether it be TV, movies, books, whatever, where many of the Jedi had opportunities to do and display some of the powers that we're seeing from the High Republic, but they don't. So that, you got to wonder, so what happened? Why did these powers, or these abilities, or the secrets, or the teachings, why were they lost? Like, what happened there? And maybe we'll get some answers there, but which I think is intriguing. I'd love to see. I hope they do dig into that, but maybe not.
Well, and it's great. I mean, again, it's a sign of the times and of the era, to where there's this era of basically enlightenment, and you don't have all of the binders on you as to what you can think of and explore. But like we've seen with Elzar Man, clearly there's a line of what they will still tolerate and accept within the order. So I'm with you. I want to see that explored a little bit more as we get through subsequent material.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to believe, I mean, Bell didn't think he could do it. I didn't think we were going to get through this in an hour and a half, but somehow we did. Nice work.
And I got all my talking points out, so I'm pretty happy about it. I didn't have to cut much, which is good.
I find if you want to end on time, let's just let Albert talk. He will get him. Actually, it's never worked out ever.
It's never. That's actually not a good strategy. No.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Definitely don't ask him a question.
Yeah, don't ask me a question. Man, I don't know. I enjoy doing this. I know we're doing this like to the nth degree, and we've got a lot of great feedback. We haven't even had any negative feedback on doing this. In fact, speaking of feedback, I did want to highlight and call out one piece of feedback I got last night, actually, like around 2 a.m. In the morning, and this is Matthew Cato. I don't know if you guys know, he was a chief editor or one of the editors for GamePro magazine for years. And the only reason I know is because I used to subscribe to the magazine. I'd see his name there all the time. He was up there at the top of the list. And GamePro or Game Informer, sorry. And they're no longer around. I think the magazine closed down last year at some point. But anyways, he listens to the show. Great, big supporter of the show. And he left some feedback last night. Said, just listen to your guys' first episode, Light of the Jedi. Great stuff. And we had a quick exchange after that. So thank you, Matthew, for listening and following the show and supporting the show, but more importantly, for enjoying what we're doing here. And we've got one episode left. We've got part 5 coming up next week. And we'll wrap the whole thing up with that. And then we'll, kind of see how we do. I don't know. We'll have to come back, and we've got to do Into the Light. That might be, or Into the Darkness. Into the Darkness. I can't keep light, darkness, shadows. It's like all over the place right now. But we need to do something there. So I don't know if we'll do something similar like this, or maybe we go back to the old school one since it's a little bit shorter, and we'll figure that out. But I do want to mention the last thing before we get out of here is in 2 weeks. So once we're done with this, we're going to come back and do a question and answer. So a listener questions episode. We haven't done one in quite some time. We've talked about it. I'll start promoting that this week here on social media, so you can see that. But feel free to reach out to us in all of the ways. You can see it in the show notes here if you're listening. If you got pulled up on the podcast. Or you can go out to any of our social media platforms and throw a question out there, respond to the post there. Or if you're in our Discord, we'll post something there as well. But we need your questions, things you want us to answer, speculate, talk about, make up, if you will. But we're looking for questions. And this is really open to anything. So we can talk about Bad Batch. We can talk about Mandalorian. We can talk about any of the new shows. We can talk about the High Republic. It's pretty much an open forum. So Patreon members will always get first pick. We'll be sure to answer all of those questions. And then as time permits, we'll get to the other questions and the other answers, depending on how long we want the show to go. So I'm sorry. I know I said a lot there, but Jonesy, you got any final things or anything there?
Q&A shows are always a favorite of ours. I think we do have spring break coming up here pretty soon, so we might have to see what the schedule does to some of that. So don't hold us to it too tightly, please. But yeah, look for the Q&A. We always get a fantastic group of questions. And join us over on Discord. We get a lot of questions on Discord. And we usually have a questions channel there for feedback as well. So eargluemedia.com/Discord. But other than that, I think we're ready to call this a night. Stick your lightsaber in and cue the theme music.
Nice one. All right, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you guys back next week for episode 362, which will bring us to the final episode of Light of the Jedi. See you then.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.